Okay, here we go. Well, we finally did it. We did something that we have been teasing for a long time, something that we've made jokes about, something that we've continually put off and teased and foreshadowed for more than one episode.
Many months.
That's right. Finally finished it. Atlanta. Did you like that?
Yeah.
That joke is specifically for Armando, who caught wind of us making all the Shoresy jokes before. And when I say we, let's just say just me. I finished Atlanta. Micah didn't finish it.
I never was watching it, really.
You watched the first season with me.
Yeah, but that was it.
But, yeah, I finished season 4. I did it. I damn did it, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
Jeez. Okay. What a weird show, man. Yeah, it's a really strange one to recommend to people. Because I know it's not going to be for everybody. I just know it. I know that there's a lot of people that'll watch it and they'll think, this is too weird. This doesn't make any sense. We're not following the main characters enough. There's too many... By the way, do you know what a bottle episode is?
It's just by itself.
It's an episode that has its own... Like, it's almost completely separate from the main...
overarching story of the series or
right.
whatever.
And oftentimes it'll be with completely different characters that you don't know. Like, it's just something that stands by itself as like a... There's too many bottle episodes in Atlanta. I don't like it. There's that person out there for sure. But this show, I think, has grown on me more and more and more as I've gone through the seasons. And I'm at the point now where I feel like the show is greater than the sum of its parts, in the sense that, like, I gave each season a 7 point something. I think that the show put together deserves higher than that. And I feel good about giving it that too.
You feel good.
I feel good about it. So anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself here a little bit. What do I like about season 4? Season 4 is Atlanta. It's more Atlanta. They return to Atlanta in this one. In season 3, they're in Europe, and they are basically, every episode happens in a different city in Europe, and it doesn't feel quite the same as the other seasons because it's not taking place in the same setting. People complained about that. I loved it. I thought it was really good, really interesting. You know, different backdrop, different place for these people to get into their weird little situations. But season 4 is back in Atlanta, so it kind of feels like the old Atlanta again. There's still some strange bottle episodes. There's one in particular that's like a documentary of how they made the Goofy movie. Do you remember the Goofy movie?
Do I remember the Goofy movie?
Anyway, the whole joke behind this is the Goofy movie is the blackest movie of all time.
Really?
Yeah. Which apparently is like a thing. Like people see it as being sort of like a black culture movie. For certain elements. Anyway, the documentary is about the guy that like created the Goofy movie. His name's like James Washington. His last name is Washington. I'm just going to call him James Washington, even if that's not his real name. But just like his story about how he created the Goofy movie, and they're interviewing his like family and his son and his ex-wife and his animation teachers back in college and like the people that worked with him on the movie, and how like he sort of just went insane. And I was like, what is going on? And I looked it up. It's complete bullshit. They made it all up, but like it made me look it up. Like it was done so well. So there's still plenty of bottle episodes like that. But I think that you get some closure with particularly Ern and Van and Alfred. They get to see their arcs wrap up in this season in a pretty satisfying way, I thought. And then there's some other wrap up stuff that happens with Darius that is a little more controversial. but I'll save that for the spoiler talk section. It's still like beautifully shot. Like it's one of the highest production value TV shows you'll ever see. It's still really funny when it's wanting to be funny. It's off-putting when it's wanting to be off-putting. It succeeds at basically what it wants to do. Dislikes? I didn't really have any dislikes. Like at this point, I'm used to the way that Atlanta works. I know that they're gonna rip me out of the main story every once in a while and show me just something completely random, just whatever they felt like doing that day. So I'm used to that. So I'm not going to complain about that as it pertains to season 4. And everybody does a great job acting wise. It's still as surreal and strange as ever. Yeah, it's really solid. I'm going to go ahead and rate it so that I can talk about spoilers. I'll give season 4 an 8.5 in terms of enjoyment, but I'm also gonna rate this season, and I feel like this fits.
You mean the show?
Yeah, sorry, the show. I'm gonna rate the show as a whole, and like the first season, I gave like a 7 point something to. Same with season 2 and 3. You just heard me give this season an 8.5. Oh, an 8.5 sensory deprivation tanks out of 10. So yeah, you know my scores of the other seasons. I'm giving the show as a whole a 9.3, which doesn't add up.
9.3 what?
I'll give it a 9.3. Hey man, can I measure your tree?
That's a throwback.
Yeah, out of 10. And I know that doesn't make sense, but this show doesn't make sense, so it works. Okay, now is the spoiler section. So the controversial way that this season ends is the last episode is called "It Was All a Dream," and throughout the episode, Darius is in a sensory deprivation tank, and he keeps waking up throughout the episode, and you don't really know what's real and what's not at the end. And his way to tell whether or not he's in the dream is thick Judge Judy. So if he sees Judge Judy on TV and she's super thick, then he knows that he's in the tank. So that's his way to tell. And the beginning of the episode starts with him watching Judge Judy. She doesn't stand up, so you don't see if she's thick or not. That's the beginning. At a certain point in the episode, she stands up and walks off the bench, and she's super thick, and he's like, damn. And then he wakes up. And then he wakes up a couple of other times throughout the episode. And then at the very end of the episode, he's with Ern and Van and Alfred. And they just came back from a very strange par for the course Atlanta situation where they're being held hostage in a black fusion sushi restaurant. And then Darius saves them. He like busts into the restaurant and he's like, "Get in my pink Maserati outside." They all jump in the pink Maserati. He drives them off. And they're like, "Where did you get the pink Maserati?" "Oh, I stole it." "What? You had us in a stolen car?" And then he's like, "No, it's going to be okay because this is just a dream and I'll wake up soon. It's not a big deal." And then Ern's like, "No, Darius, this is not a dream. This is real life." And he's like, "Yeah, well, maybe this is a dream and I just dreamed up all of you guys too." And they're like, "Okay." And then they leave. And then, well, they go outside to smoke weed and they're like, "Are you coming?" And he says, "Yes. Just give me a minute." And he's watching Judge Judy. And then it cuts away and Darius smiles. And then that's the end of the show. So you don't know
if Judge Judy stood up and she was thick.
Right.
Thick as hell.
I saw a comment on Reddit, I think, and they're like, "I cannot believe that they turned thick Judge Judy into an actual serious plot device." Like, yeah, they kind of did, didn't they? But yeah, it's implied that maybe all of this was in Darius's head. And normally, I would not like that kind of an ending. It feels lazy and contrived and just like, deep for the sake of being deep.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was telling Micah this the other day, if any show has earned the right to end
Claim.
like that, to end in a surreal way, it's Atlanta. And like, if you want to see the whole thing as a dream, like the proof is there from the beginning. There are so many strange dreamlike things that happen in this show throughout all of the seasons. It's weird all the way through.
Well, and it almost kind of explains why Darius is the way that he is.
Right.
If it is a dream, it makes sense that he's so quirky and weird and says weird things and does weird things because it's a dream to him.
Yeah. Right.
But
yeah,
he could just be a quirky dude, and he's a great character, but it would almost explain the way that he is.
Yeah. Another thing that I was thinking about, so I actually heard a quote from, I think it was Donald Glover, when they were asking him about Atlanta, and he described Atlanta as being like an album. So like a season of Atlanta is like an album. It's not all connected. It doesn't all need to be connected. It's all its own thing.
Mm-hmm. Each season is its own thing.
And even each episode is its own thing.
Yeah, because it's each individual song.
Right. And normally, again, like this is what makes Atlanta special in my opinion. Normally, I would hate that. I would say this season feels uneven. It feels like they didn't know what they wanted. It feels like they didn't know what they were doing. And it just leaves me feeling unsettled, and I don't like it, and my pants are unsettled. That's what I would say. But with Atlanta, you get the like very strong sense that they told the story exactly as they wanted to tell it in every single episode.
Mm-hmm.
It's so confidently done, and like I said, it's funny when it's trying to be funny. It's scary when it's trying to be scary. It's off-putting when it's trying to be off-putting. It's surreal when it wants to be surreal. It nails everything that it goes for, and you won't find another show like this on TV. So, circling back to the very beginning, it's difficult to recommend this to people because there are going to be people that hate it for sure. And I get that. But at the same time, I think everybody should give it a try because it's so unique and so different from everything else that's come before it that I've ever seen. And I don't think they're going to make another show like this for a very long time, if they ever do. Because it takes like a very special creative mind to come up with something like this.
When to get funding for it also.
Right. And I just don't see it happening. And I think you should give it a try. Like, there's a lot of language. They deal with some heavy themes. There is a little bit of sex, but it's never graphic. Like, it never shows anything explicit.
But there are substances.
Right. So, as long as you're okay watching that in a show, you need to give this a try. Like, at least a couple of episodes. If you watch a couple of episodes and you laugh and you are entertained and you think it's fun, maybe it's a little weird, but like, you're enjoying yourself, keep going, because I think by the end of your journey with this show, you'll end up where I'm at, where I'm like, okay, yeah, this is an all-timer. Like it's very, if it's not already within like 5-10 years, this is going to be on a lot of lists of like the top 20 shows of all time, the top 10 shows of all time. Like I could easily, and it would deserve it. Like if someone wanted to say that this is their favorite show ever, I'd have to throw my hands up and say, yeah, that's a fair opinion. So I recommend checking out Atlanta. I really enjoy it. I'm really happy I finished it finally. You'll like this. There's a great resolution to Ern's thing with Van.
Their relationship.
Mm-hmm. So he takes Van and Lottie on a camping trip, and he finally like commits. And he's like, and Van is like super hesitant to accept it. She's like, you're just saying this because you're going to move to LA and you want to take us with you because you don't know anyone. And he's like, no, that's not it. Like, I love you and I always have.
Oh.
And I realized that when we were in Europe and I was worrying about you so much and worrying about Lottie so much, I could get another girlfriend easily in Los Angeles if that's what I wanted. I don't want to do that. Like, I want this. I want our family. And that's how their story
That's nice.
Wraps up. And it's like really, really sweet little episode.
Yeah, that's nice.
And Alfred moves out to a farm.
He gives up music?
No, I think he's still recording, but he buys a farm.
In Georgia?
Yeah, in Georgia. It's kind of funny because in one of the previous episodes, do you remember the Soldier Boy dance? Mm-hmm. The crank that and apparently everybody would make like videos about it. Mm-hmm. In the world of Atlanta, there's a crank that killer. And this killer goes around and kills people that made crank that videos. And Alfred doesn't believe in it, but Alfred made a crank that video back in the day. And so he gets like hunted through a mall during this episode by the crank that killer. And he actually calls Soulja Boy. And he's like, have you heard of the crank that killer? He's like, yeah, man, I'm packing up the house right now. I'm moving out to my farm, my compound. You don't have a compound yet? Oh, you're supposed to get a compound so that, you know, if the shit ever hits the fan, you can move out there. And then within a couple of episodes, Alfred has bought this farm in Georgia. Funny. So I think, you know, that's connected. And he seems just to be like at peace with himself and with the world. And yeah, it's just, and then there's the way that Darius wraps up. And I think that that's true Atlanta fashion.
Yeah.
If you watched that and you thought that episode didn't feel like Atlanta, or was like weird even for Atlanta, I don't know what show you've been watching. Like this, it's par for the course in my opinion for how this show has always been. Yeah. I think that's all I've got to say.
Okay. I haven't talked about this book, right? I don't think I have.
I don't think so.
Okay. I recently read this book, Yellowface, and it's about this white woman. Her name is June Hayward, and all throughout college and post-college, she's been friends with this woman, Athena. And Athena is Asian American. Or she's Chinese. I think she was very young when her parents immigrated to the United States. And they met in college, and Athena is a very successful author. And June has always been jealous of her, and it seemed like on June's end, they were always June was always trying to catch up to Athena, and she could never do it, and Athena was so successful, and like once a month or every other month, they'd go out for drinks, and June always felt like Athena was just bragging the whole time, like, oh, I just got a deal with Netflix to turn one of my books into a movie. Oh, I just got a huge signing bonus with this new publisher, or the check that they get at the beginning of
advance.
Yeah, a huge advance of like $100,000 for this book, and I'm already getting royalties or whatever. And so June has published one book at this time, and it was not very successful. And so June has always been very, very jealous of Athena. And at the beginning of the book, June and Athena go back to Athena's apartment, and they're hanging out, they're drinking, and Athena goes, oh, let's make pancakes. So then they have a pancake eating contest, and Athena ends up choking and dying. And at some point, right around there, June steals a manuscript from Athena's apartment and rewrites it, but uses the base of Athena's manuscript as her own, and publishes a book with Athena's manuscript. And it does very well, but she does get a lot of hate because it's about Chinese workers, Asian workers, during World War I, that period of time, or World War II, a long time ago. Immigrant workers, or just, and June is white, and so people are like, why are you qualified to talk about this? And so that's kind of where like the Yellowface starts. because people feel like she's appropriating
Mm-hmm.
by talking about this. And it kind of talks about if you do the research, are you qualified to talk about something, or do you need to come from that demographic to be able to talk about something? And so it really does talk about that topic, which is really interesting because I don't feel like I've ever read a book that talks about that before. And it's an interesting topic that's not going to go away, because those are two very different viewpoints of you need to come from this demographic versus, do the research and you can talk about whatever you want. And June never claims that she's Asian.
But she did steal the manuscript.
She stole the manuscript. And then after, when the book is being edited and it's on its way to being released, her publishers and editor and all of that, they say, let's have you write under a different name. You published your first book under June Hayward. It didn't do super well. What's your middle name? And so her middle name is Juniper, and she publishes under the name Juniper Song for some reason. I think is what it was. I think it's Juniper Song, which sounds Asian. So then
this is that Seinfeld episode.
Right. So then people think she is Asian just based off of her name. So then she doesn't get as much hate, but then people find out that she's white, and so people get upset. So it talks about that, and as the book goes on, she does more and more questionable things, and at some point people do call her out for plagiarism because people figure it out or something and have suspicions, and she has to tell her publishing company that, like, no, this is mine. And it's a bit sus. And I don't want to spoil the book, but I will say June is not... Oh, that's what it was. Her first name is Juniper and her middle name is Song. But she goes by June, right? Okay, so that's where it came from. So Juniper Song. June is not a good person. I mean, she stole a dead woman's manuscript, but then she gets into the mindset of, well, it's hers. It might have been Athena's original, manuscript, but the book is totally different than what it was. So she's justifying. And she just goes down this rabbit hole of justifying, and she becomes a worse and worse person, in my opinion. Not that she was that good of a person anyways. And then there's a lot of questionable things that she does. And so it's hard to relate to her, for one, and also feel sorry for her, for two, because she's not a very compelling character. She's kind of a douche and just not a great person. But it does have a lot of different talking points that are interesting, and so I liked it overall, the story, but she was a hard character to be okay with. So I think I'm going to rate this a 7. A 7 Yale graduates out of 10. You have something else?
Mm-hmm. I read a book as well. Forgot to report on this one. I actually finished it a couple weeks ago. It's called Long Walk to Freedom, and it's Nelson Mandela's autobiography. I read this for work. My work is kind enough to offer us certain books and movies that we can consume that hopefully will make us better people and inspire us or whatever. Anyways, the upshot is we can use work time to watch these movies and read these books, and this is one of the books that is included on that approved list. And how do I feel about it, you ask? How do I feel about it, Micah asks? Well, you remember what the title is?
No.
Long Walk to Freedom?
Oh, okay.
There's a big hint in that name, in that title.
Freedom.
Almost.
2.
No. Keep going.
2 freedom.
No. It's one word in the title.
Walk.
There's not a lot of walking in it.
Walk to freedom.
I said one word.
Oh, walk.
I said walk was not the word.
Oh, freedom.
I said freedom wasn't the word.
Two.
Two is nothing. Two is a nothing word.
It's an article, is it not?
It's a conjunction. Yes. Whatever. Try again.
I don't know what you're asking for.
It's long. This book is long.
How was I ever supposed to guess that?
And look, this is my big disclaimer. Nelson Mandela is a very accomplished person. Was a very accomplished person. And he was a big part of the engine that united that country and broke apartheid and, changed the world in some ways. And you can't ever take that away from him. And he devoted his life to this, to this struggle. It's very admirable, and he's very brave. He's very admirable for being able to forgive the people that locked him away for so long. And that's great. And it came at great personal sacrifice. He lost his wife twice in the process.
Two different wives?
Divorced twice. Oh. Didn't really get to know his children for the longest time because he was in prison. And when he was out of prison, he was in meetings and drawing up documents and manifestos and going to rallies and getting arrested and organizing and at one point raising an army. So it came at the cost of his family. So, much respect to what he accomplished. All that out of the way, he's not a very entertaining writer. And his book is so dense that I was ready for it to be over. By the time it was over. And this took me a really, really long time to chew through. I learned a lot about him, so that's cool. I'm never going to read this book again. It's not riveting. That's all I've really got to say about it. So I'm going to give this book again, this is my enjoyment of it. This is how much I enjoyed the book. It is in no way a reflection of what I think of him as a person or anything like that. But the book is getting a big fat 6 from me. A big fat 6. I'll give it a 6 Johannesburgs out of 10. It's been a rough year for me for books. Alright. That's it, right? What's next?
I've been listening to this really good book, The German Girl.
When are you going to talk about Dave the Diver?
Maybe next week. Well, I'm not done with the game.
Are you going to wait until you finish the whole thing and all the DLCs to talk about it?
No. There's still so much to do.
You also haven't talked about Stardew Valley.
I don't play video games, though.
Okay. Alright, that's it, everybody.
Bye!